Hi everybody, you all right? Nice to see you again, albeit online. Right. Hi James, good evening to you. Where are you coming from, James? Where are you signing in from? Hi Chris, you all right? Get those woods up to you soon. I've actually found a box now to put the woods in. But I'll have to take the heads off. I'll talk to you about it later. But it'd be perfectly safe to get them to you. Okay, a few more minutes. Make sure everyone can get signed in. Any questions you've got, type them in when you can, please. And then I'll answer them as I go through, because your question might well be relevant to one of the. I've got 8 main points I want to go through tonight. West Oxford, is that what you play? So if you've got any questions, type them in, and I'll link those questions into the points that I'm raising tonight. Are there any? First of all, is the picture and the sound okay? Is the connection okay for you? It looks okay from what I'm looking at here. Give it a couple more minutes. If you just type in and just let me know if the sound is okay and the picture's okay. Great stuff, thanks James. So if you've got your putter with you, that'd be good. Doesn't matter if you've not, you can always rewatch it. Me tonight to demonstrate a couple of things, and I've also bought my wedge as well. So I'll be demonstrating a couple of things you can do. There's quite a few things you can do actually. Hi David. Hi Jay. Thanks for coming along. Great stuff. Brilliant. So there's a bit of a delay. I asked that question about 30 seconds ago. So there's about a 30-second delay, which is fine. Alrighty, so it's now just almost 3 minutes past half past. We'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started. And you can have a look at what we do and sort of demonstrate along at the same time, or have a go at it at the same time. Thanks, Alan. I've got 8 main points I want to run through tonight, and they're all sort of linked to the short game. Linked to one of the sites that I use. It's got my data. It's quite interesting now how much you can get offline. Everything's out there now. We know so much. We used to have to search for stuff so much in golf, and like little snippets that you'd learn from. Hi, Karen. Nice to see you again. Little snippets that you learn from professionals that you knew and what have you. But now everything's online, so it's all so much easier. So I use a chap called Lou Stagner. Oops. And I'm just getting his websites up now. Because he's just brilliant. I don't know how he gets all the data, but he manages to get it. Alrighty. That's good. All right, well, listen, thanks ever so much for tuning in. We did this Survey Monkey, or Will did the Survey Monkey, so this time seemed to suit everybody. It really suits me. I love doing this sort of thing at the end of the night, having a chat. And hopefully you're all finding something to do during the day, which is positive and outdoors and getting some sort of fresh air and what have you. Killing the night time is obviously a bit more tricky. Alrighty, so there are loads of different ways. You will have seen it this week at the Masters. There's loads of different ways of holding the putter. The way the putter designed, it has a very, very flat handle at the top. And that's probably the most important feature of that putter. You can just see it there now. That's the flat part of the top. The putter itself is round everywhere else. And the top part here is absolutely flat. So when we do club repairs, we put putters on for people, we have to ensure that that top flat part is absolutely aligned to the putter face. If the flat part is aligned to the putter face, you can see my putter face is absolutely square there. It'll move squarely through the strike. If it's misaligned, you won't really realise it, but 1 or 2 degrees out, if a pro's put that on badly, and it's something which all pros pride themselves on, if a pro's put that flat top part of the putter on badly, you just see it there, then it will misalign the putter face. So when you get your putter in your hand, your thumbs should be absolutely down the top of the handle. Now, it doesn't actually matter if you split the hands, or if you have the hands the other way around, or if you like to sort of interlock the fingers like that, or if you do a claw like that. Whichever thumb is on the handle at the top should be absolutely flat and flush to that handle. Yeah. So I'll take my shirt off and my jumper off then. Get a bit better light. How you doing? Thanks for tuning in. So the thumbs there are on top of the handle. Now, in terms of once you've held the putter, and like I said, experiment which we had both his hands either side of the handle like this. So he didn't put his hands so they faced each other, which is the more sort of logical and possibly the easiest way of getting you to put. If you think about the palms facing each other like this, they then link to the putter face. If one of your palms is underneath, then it can twist the putter face during the stroke. So if you are tending to miss the ball left or right, then it could well be that one of your hands, if you misalign the hands, then it's okay to misalign them as long as they're both slightly misaligned. And that connection has just gone a bit shaky there. Okay, it's back. But like I say, Jack Nicklaus actually had both his hands a little bit underneath the handle like that. So you're welcome to experiment. So what will happen is if you experiment on the putting green or on your carpet at home, and you start holding one or two or something feels better, then stick with it and experiment with it. Everything has a shelf life in golf. And I've been through every single different sort of style of putting in my lifetime. That was an old favourite of mine there. I used to sort of link two fingers in. I don't do that anymore now. I put very much more orthodox now. And the reason why we sort of extend the fingers down the handle is that it means that the wrists get a bit locked out. The worst thing you can do on a putting stroke is sort of twitch a little bit like this. So what I want you to do is when you're at home, is literally experiment with the claw, splitting the hands, below right. Place your fingers right down the hand like that. You can see there, I've got my fingers all the way down, my forefingers are all the way down, like that. And then just experiment with it. Moving up from your hands into your body, I really teach a bit of a cradle. If you think of your elbows forming a cradle like this, that gives you a nice rocking motion between the shoulders, the elbows, and the wrists. Bad putters tend to flick a little bit, just use the hand like that. So the next thing I do is once you've experimented with your thumbs, is experiment with a bit of elbow bend. I get quite down, I'm 6'2", I like to get right down, sort of really rock like this. So from this angle here, I just tilt my screen a bit. From this angle here, I like to get right over it and put like this. It's very unorthodox, but I love it. I get right over the ball here. I like to get lots of bend in what I'm doing here. You don't have to stand particularly tall to put, although some players do. That looks more orthodox, so if I stand like that, you can see I look like a bit more orthodox. You'll see that quite often on tour, a bit of bend. But I like to get right down like that. I like to look at the ball. If you look at the way my head is looking now, you think of what it's like if you had glasses on your face. You look through the glasses straight ahead, or binoculars. You look straight ahead. I do the same thing when I look at the ball. I like to get right down and give it a good look at that angle there. If I stand a bit too tall, it sort of obscures my view a little bit. So like I say, there's lots and lots of ways of doing it. And a good way of practicing as well is practicing in front of the mirror. Have a look at yourself and see, do you look professional or do you look like you're sort of a bit out of position there? But I get right down to it. I like looking at the putt. I like looking at the ball from there. Now, Cohen's just asked about thicker super stroke grips. We sell hundreds of them and people love them. And I think they're a really good thing, really. I think 126 players on the ladies and the men's tour combined in 2019 were using them. So they're very popular on the tour. And again, go into the shop and experiment and feel one. You might say, I just really like the feel of that. It's quite a bit heavier, a bit thicker, a bit longer. And it's well worth to go and experimenting. Go into the pro shop and just ask the pro if you can take the putter onto the putting green. And again, if it starts to work, then just stick with it, because putting is not as much of an exact science as you might think. A lot of it's down to luck, and there's some great stories over the years when touring professionals used to go to events, and they go into the shop and literally buy a putter for a $5 that had been an old second-hand barrel and go out and win the event. They're always looking for just a little bit of luck and a little bit of sort of a little bit of magic, really, for want of a better word. And putting, like I say, it's a very inexact science. So you are really encouraged to experiment. And Di and Alistair will tell you exactly the same thing. They sort of look for the orthodox method first of all, have a go at that. And then once you've tried the orthodox, which is where the palms face each other and the fingers point down, fiddle about a little bit, try different things, interlock your fingers, do something peculiar. Also about putting with your glove on. I don't particularly like putting my glove on. Again, it's a habit thing. But some good players do like to put the glove on. The reason why I wear a glove on the left hand is that the left hand has all the contact with the handle. So if I put my hand on the handle there like I would do normally, my left hand has loads of contact, and the right hand only has a small amount of contact. So that's why we take our glove off when we put with a bit more feel. Now, if you do have injuries and your hands or your arms are affected by that, if you've got a left arm injury and you're not using it, or it's difficult to use it properly, or normally as we might say, is think of your right palm being the putter face and you're trying to push that to the target all the time. Yeah, so it's a great image for you. That many of the world's best players, when they practice their putting, will literally just put the club into one hand anyway. Let me tilt my screen down for you. And they'll practice their putting just with one hand anyway, and just move the putter backwards and forwards. It's a tremendous way of getting the feel of the pendulum of the strike. Now that's the speed. Now that's the speed at which Mother Nature wants that putter to swing at. You mustn't fight that. So if you can find this, is a brilliant exercise for you actually. Just take the putter and let it hang, and just move it backwards and forwards, and then start feeling the weight of the natural weight of the putter swing. So I'm not yanking that forward or snatching backwards and forwards. I sort of get it moving and I try and move with it. I'm certainly not slowing it down. And being too fast with the putter is as bad as being too slow with the putter. That putter wants to fall at that speed. That's its natural weight of speed at which it falls. So if you can find that, it's a fantastic exercise for you at home. And the teaching pro who really noticed this, the way the pros all see, the good putters seem to put at Mother Nature's speed, started timing them. This is back in the 90s, started timing what they were doing. And then it's timing how things fell. And he found that the best putters were absolutely linked with Mother Nature's speed. And he found that the best putters were absolutely linked with Mother Nature's speed. And I can assure you now that if you can get that putter moving at Mother Nature's speed, that sort of tick, tock, like that, and then you get the right amount of acceleration, because the putter itself will sort of accelerate of its own accord rather than you trying to hit through. And there's nothing worse than a big long swing which really decelerates, because that way then you're not using Mother Nature at all. So experiment with your grip, experiment with your stance, and you can see it on the telly. The pros have so many different ways of doing it. Okay, so I'm going to type in now on here, then you've got it, Lou Stagner on Twitter. You don't have to have a Twitter account to read his stats. Hi, Billy. Hey, you all right? If you then work through the Lou Stagner site, you can then go to, just type this in, here are make rates. Here are make rates, inch by inch, from 3 feet to 10 feet for the best players on the PGA Tour. And what it shows you on this, it shows you exactly what putts they made from what distance. So on here, he's got a graph. I'm just getting the right light for you, which I probably can't actually. Got a graph, and it shows from 4.2%. From 6 foot, they missed 35%. It's remarkable. From 6 foot, that's two paces, two quite big strides there. They missed 35% of those. So it's well worth going through and having a look, because you then start seeing, well, just how many putts the pros miss. What he also talks about, Lou Stagner, is when you look through his Twitter feed, you'll see all this. He talks about how many putts they take from certain distances. And I think it's 38 foot where they start taking 2.0 something. So they start to miss putts for 38 foot. They tend to not 3 putts all the time, but 1 in 10 putts of 38, they'll end up taking 3 putts. So it's well worth looking through that, especially if you're into sort of data and sort of if you're into sort of looking at what the tour pros actually do. We saw it at the weekend. You think everyone's hitting the ball 350 yards all the time, but loads of players are hitting the ball significantly less than the world's longest hitters. Guys are making great money hitting the ball 250, 260, 270 all the time. So stats are quite interesting, really, to go through. Okay, so a couple of drills and exercises for you now. is probably one of my favourites. Let me get the camera work here to be good. Get yourself up to the wall. Now, because I bend right down on my putt, I can do it on this little thing here, this cupboard here. Get your head to the wall and then scrape your putter along the wall like that. And it really encourages you to swing the putter on a straight line. Now, I like to put my putter, I'll put something down here, down here. I like to put my putter on a very straight line when I putt. So I get right down to it, and I put along the target here. And I can assure you, if you get that putter head moving back and forward on a straight line, there's loads of benefits. Most notably, you'll get a decent contact and decent strike. If your putter wobbles around and comes around these angles here, you get more of an oblique, glancing blow on the ball. If you get in here and get that putter moving backwards and forward, get your head against the wall and scrape your putter along the skirting board like this, and you move it backwards and forwards like that, that's a brilliant way of training the putter to move on a straight line. We know that not everybody moves the putter head on a straight line. Tiger Woods, believe it or not, at the peak of his game, had a 20-degree opening and closing of his putter like that. So his putter had a huge amount of opening and closing, like an arc, like a window wiper, I suppose, like an arc on his putting stroke. And that's what worked for him. So if you stand against the wall and you feel that the putter moves away from the wall, it's not a bad thing there, as long as it moves backwards to the wall like this. So as an example of that, again, if I put my club down here, Tiger Woods was notable because he stood a little bit further away from the ball than the other pros, and his putter moved on an arc around here. His putter face open by 20 degrees and closed by 20 degrees. So from the most open point to its most closed point, there's about a 20-degree range. So he actually put it around on an arc like this, and there's nothing wrong with that. I like to put on a straight line, but not everyone can do it. If you like to put on an arc, then you'll feel it straight up when you stand to a wall, the putter head will come towards you. If the putter head bangs into the wall, that's a bit of a problem, really. You don't want the putter head ever going that way in a putting stroke. Straight is good, and inside is good. Okay, Jay, that's good news. Okay, so we've then done the stats. We've done how to experiment and hold the putter. There's an awful lot of ways you can do that with the experiment and the putter. Put to the wall. Okay. Now, if you could do a deal with the devil, and every putt you ever struck, your putter face pointed more or less on target. By the time you hit the ball, it's pointing more or less to the target, not left, not right. And if you did that each time, and you push your putter face to the target, you could explain putting to an alien, and they would understand that that ball should roll more or less on that line there. Yeah. So a great exercise for you is, let's say, I'm going to do this. That's a flat surface there on the chair. I stand about a pace away from that. Now watch what I do now. I push my putter head and get it to finish square to the wall. Not with the toe pointing that way or the heel pointing that way, but as I push through my putter head, I push it square to the wall. So let me try and get my reflection now to you. So if I was putting to you, you can see there I'm pushing my putter face to you. If I push that putter face that way, then the ball's likely to follow that route, and say if I push the putter face that way. So physically push your putter face on a straight line to your target, on a straight path to your target. So by the time it comes to a straight edge here, set myself up and I push, and I can check it, and I can see it's absolutely square there. What I've not got is any roll over. Now in terms of the physical movement needed to do that, watch how my hands now push down to the target like that. Now what I said before, we're not looking for a sort of roll and twist of the hands or a flick like this. We're looking to rock the arms forward, and you can see as I push my arms forward, my right palm pushes to the target, and the back of my left arm pushes to the target. Back of my left hand rather. So you know I said before, if you have an injury in one of your hands,
I said about the right palm pushing to the target if you only can put with one hand, like that. If you've got injury to the right side and you're pushing with the left arm, then you push your left back of the hand out towards the target. And that's a very common position to see good players put to. They'll push that left wrist out there. Because if they cup it like that, that putter then, very good, Chris. If we twist the hands all the way up, that putter then becomes more lofted. And that means the ball will jump up and down and bobble on the green rather than pushing and rolling towards the target. So we're not looking for a twist or a flick of the hands like this. We're looking for a low push. And when they get right down close to the putter heads of the pros on tour, the putter is very close to the ground. It's almost like it's ironing the ground, really. Stays very close. And you can't do that if your left wrist gives way and flicks up like this. So we're looking to push the face of the putter either with the right hand palm or the back of the left hand pushing that way. So that's the motion you can see there of a putting action. Okay. Now, pace is a really important aspect of putting. When I do a measurement, and you can do this measurement yourself actually, if you put a ball down your carpet and you can put, say, 4 or 5 paces, whatever the length of your areas that you can put on, if you put the ball to the target, then typically they'll roll more or less on the same line, but they might go quite a different distance, short and long. Now, if you're someone who needs to work on their on getting the ball up to the hole, sometimes some people are very timid on the hole. Just get on your putting surface. If you have a carpet, have a little rub down here on the carpet. And I put to my cup here. And when I put to it, I'm trying to get that put to a little bit of a ding as it hits the cup. Bit of firmness to it. Now, because I've got no fear of missing or going too far there, I feel quite confident that I can give it a bit of a wrap and get that ball tapping in. Now, if you're somebody who's fed up of knocking the ball miles, just rehearse. This is much harder now. Just rehearse. That was lousy. That was far too timid. And we're trying to just to fall. You get a much more delicate tap as it goes into the tin there. It's much harder for me, this. Just about did it that time. So when you're rehearsing your putting at home, you need to just do 5 or 10 minutes at a time. You can work on the pace of what you're doing there. I do it all the time when I'm in the carpet in the shop or I'm at home, get on the putting surface and just try and get the ball to die. So in the middle of summertime, I'll be practicing doing very delicate puts and get the ball just to dribble up to the hole. This time of year, I'll try and wrap the ball and get it to rattle into the back of the cup. Okay. Right, one of my favourite drills now for chipping. We're going to move on to chipping now. We've done a bit of putting there now. Let's have a look at how we do a bit of chipping. If we look at a wedge here, right, this wedge here, which I've picked out, has got 52 degrees of loft. So measured from here to here, 52 degrees. The more important number, believe it or not, is that number there, number 10. And that's the bounce angle. We look at what the bounce angle actually is. In fact, I'll do it on a firm surface here. You can see, hopefully I'll get the camera angle right. That wedge doesn't sit absolutely flush to that firm surface. It sits here in a little gap underneath here. And that gap is actually the 10 degrees measured from there to there. So let me try to get a better angle there. But so you can see there, the wedge actually sits off the ground. It doesn't sit flush to the ground like that. And that 10 degrees angle is necessary. It's completely the most important part of the club. We're now trying to get that sole of the club to bounce on the ground. Because what happens is when we make contact with a wedge, if the sole of the club gets underneath the ball doesn't fly off the face straight away. It sort of rolls up the face a little bit like this. And so if that sole slides on the ground for longer and we develop an arc, the arc looks like this. And this is one of my favourite wedge exercises. So it gets you to understand how the club really interacts with the ground. Now, if you're suffering with injury on the legs here, it doesn't matter if you start with weight on the right leg. So let's say you've got left leg injury. If you want to chip and stay and you pressure on the right hand side, that's absolutely fine, as long as you keep the weight on the right hand side. Don't wobble around backwards and forwards. A follow through, if you've only got the pressure on one leg, a follow through is fine if the hands and arms push forwards, like that, as long as I keep my weight centered on the leg I started with. If you're suffering with the right leg injury, you want to be on the left side, that's actually preferable, but not a disaster either way. And again, what I do is I make sure that I keep my weight on that same leg. Now, the world's top chippers will stand with the weight either behind on the right leg and stay there. You see Mickelson do that in reverse. He's a lefty, so it'll be like this. You see him do that an awful lot. We want to get a bit of height on the board. If they've got a bit of a manky line, they're trying to get decent contact, they'll lean on the left leg, and that helps them sort of cut down the ball a bit more, get a bit more contact with the turf. And of course, the different turf conditions make a massive difference to the sort of strike you're going to get. But that exercise of the arms doing this and the palms sort of sliding and creating a very nice smooth arc at the bottom was taught to me by Pete Cowan, who's a top coach to one of all the world's best players, Darren Clark, Lee Westwood and what have you. I think he's taught Brooks Koepka as well. And that's one of his drills. He gets players to feel that motion there. Because typically when we chip, we get a bit jumpy. We sort of do this sort of thing. We fall backwards and we sort of get our elbows a bit cocked out. But that motion there of the club sliding on the ground, the sole of the club sliding, you can hear as well when I'm making my chipping action. Just get further back. This is a wooden floor. I've got a little rug on here. As I'm swinging, you can hear the club is just bouncing or grazing on the ground. And I assure you, if that club does that on the ground, that ball will pop up nicely. So just listen again. You see, I'm just sort of skidding or scuffing the ground. And that's a big part of the understanding the game. It's not just understanding all the science and what have you. It's actually understanding what you're trying to intending to do. And that sliding and bouncing action there is a great feel thing. It's a great intention to do. So if you sort of get the feel of that happening, then you get that same thing on the chipping surface when you're playing. So any questions you've got, guys, just type them in now as we go. To the cow drill. All right, another one of my favourites, this. The beanbag drill. We use this all the time at the club. Now, you can do this with a beanbag, you can do it with an old tyre, a cushion, a pillow or something. What should I do here now? We're looking at the relationship between the club head, the hands and the arms. So as I hit that bag there, look what my hands did. They kept moving forwards, even though the club head stayed, because the forwards, even though the club head stayed, because the beanbag got in the way, my hands keep moving forwards. Most of the time, we're not looking for the club to pass the hands. You see, when you look at people who chip badly, you often see them do this sort of thing. They lean back and try and scoop. The beanbag drills are cracking, because it means that the club just gently gets stopped by the bag itself, but it keeps my hands moving. And that's a very professional looking position there, as I come through. And that left wrist there, we call that the bowing of the left wrist, is key for good chippers. You don't see good chippers get themselves stuck back here like this. Now again, when we do get to lockdown, or if you have the benefits of a garden, one-handed chipping, like this, just get the ball, just chop it 5 or 10 yards, and keep the hand pushing toward the target. It's much harder with the left hand, I'll show you that. But again, look at that position I developed there, that sort of left wrist staying out there rather than this cupping action here. Now these rehearsals that I'm doing all the time here, this is not a very big room, it's about 4 paces wide and 4 paces deep. I've got plenty of room just to do my rehearsals, and I love doing it. I do it all the time. When I'm in the shop at the club, I'm forever picking out wedges and personal. I'm just doing little rehearsals. And I can assure you, these rehearsals develop patterns, they develop mental images. And because there's no ball there, because there's no sort of bunker in the way, of course, it's much easier to do it. So if you have a beanbag or a cushion, in slow motion, nice and soft. Now look how I've finished here. None of this, but this motion here. Now in terms of
how tightly or how lightly we hold the handle, there's really no need to give it a grip. Hold it towards the bottom of the handle and just hold it lightly, hold it softly. Alrighty, so that's that one. Okay, finally, I'm going to show you a picture now. One of my favourite coaching pictures. And this is a wedge which Tony Jacklin used all through his career. And he came to my club and I caddied for him. Now if you get that, you can actually see on that wedge face just how many of the contact points are way down towards the toe of the club. How many of those strike points came from here? Right off the toe of the club. It's remarkable to think that one of the world's best players of the 70s, 60s and 70s, is actually looking to miss the sweet spot of the club. And you think that's really weird, really. But lots of good players do that. Loads of good players do that. And they intend to hit the ball from the toe end of the club. And the reason for that is look at the design of it. If I take a golf ball and I strike it off the toe, there's so much space there, and that ball's going to fly forward, yeah? If I get off this neck of the club here, that's a round surface. The club's getting smaller, club face is getting smaller as it comes down here. And if that round golf ball flies off a round surface, it'll shank out to the right. That's where you get those shanks from. So even the world's best players, if you type into YouTube now, Tiger Woods shank or Ian Poulter shank, you'll see them hitting a shank in tournament play. It's hilarious. You see them thinking they'll hit a ball nice and straight, but it sort of squirts off the neck of the club here and squirts off the right of the target. So good players tend to chip more from the deepest part of the club over here. That has a second benefit. You watch this here now. If I sit my club flush to the ground here, you can see that the sharp part of the club there is quite close to the belly of the ball. What good players do is they tend to lift the club up a little bit and just snuggle. Look at that. See how what I've done there? That's a terrifying view, isn't it? You think that club could easily get thinned. If I lift the club up a little bit, look at that. You get so much more of the club just to snuggle underneath and make contact. So good players, when Tiger Woods does this when he gets into a bad lie, instead of sitting the club like he would do normally, like that, watch this, he sits it upright like that. So it looks really peculiar, but we know that by doing that, he just snuggles a bit more of the club under the ball. So in order to make that happen, as I set myself up here, I wouldn't stand like I would do for a normal chip. I raise the club up and I get nice and close to it. Yes, it's a strange feeling position, but by being very upright there, it just means that that club sits not here, but here, not here. But watch this now, this is the magic part. Here, look, it just snuggles underneath it. Got more chance of getting a contact. And those few millimeters make all the difference. Alrighty, so just to finally, just to put an end to this, before if there's any more questions to ask, I'm going to get another one of the, any questions guys, just type them in, anything you've got whatsoever. Right, here it is now. So this is from the statistician. So what he's got here, the pros on the green start taking more than 2 putts at 38 feet. Okay, so I'm going to put it in here, Lou Stagner Twitter. Average shots to hole out. So just have a look at that. Now from the pros take more than 3 putts when they're sort of a long way from the hole, 168 yards. That's when they sort of, in fact, ignore what I just said there. On the green, they're taking 2 1/4 shots when they're 68 foot from the hole. So what's that? It's 23 yards, isn't it? It's not that far, actually, front to the back of the green. So have a look at that, and it'll tell you just how many shots they're taking on average on the PGA Tour. We think they're holding puts all the time, but they're not really, because the guys who are missing the cuts on Thursdays and Fridays who are shooting bad rounds, they change all the sort of all the averages of the tournament stats. All right, guys and girls. Well, what I've done there today is done a bit of chipping, a bit of putting. These are stuff you can all practice at home, and it's stuff which I do all the time. That motion of the drill, where I'm doing that for my chipping action there, the beanbag drill. I'm always got the putter in the hand, always doing something with the putter. And it's all stuff which I assure you, if you just keep rehearsing these things, when you go back to the course when it opens in early December, and you've done a few of these bits and bobs, it does have a big, big impact. And any practice that you do and any sort of rehearsals that you do creates a mental pattern, creates a neurological pattern. And if you can create that pattern and improve that pattern as you go, then that's how you get better at golf. There's no sort of nothing more complicated than that, really. It's about creating a pattern. Now, even if you create a bad pattern, then a pro will be able to sort of adjust that pattern for you and work your game that way. So Cohen just asked, do the hands finish the same for bunker shots? Brilliant question, that, Cohen. And no, they don't really. What we're looking for in a bunker shot. If you go into my YouTube page, I'll do a full video on what's called the butterfly grip. And it's one of my favourite things in the bunker. So we'll call it butterfly grip. The hands look like that. I put my left hand on over the handle, my right hand on over even more. So that's where that butterfly grip comes from. That gets my hands to move very quickly. So on this shot, for a bunker shot, I employ the butterfly grip, make quite a full swing, and on the way through, really whip my hands. So I get a lot more flick of the hands, and that gets the club. As long as I splash the sand, it puts a bit more loft on the face, I can splash the hand very aggressively and get the ball to jump up quite high. So, and the other thing as well is on a bunker shot, if you think I'm trying to hit the ball 10 yards, when we hit the sand, that takes an awful lot of power out of the shot, because the ball and the club don't meet. The ball and the sand meet, the club and the sand meet, and the ball sort of limps out. So we're looking at for a lot more swish on the way through, a lot more finish on the way through. So get the hands very active and a lot more speed. Bunker shots are a completely different thing, really. So there's not much delicacy and finesse in bunker shots. Would you lift the club for chips or just bad lies? I've got to be honest with you, Chris. I encourage people to do it for all their chipping. Now, where that started, that whole chipping off the toe, is in 1979. Jack Nicklaus had a terrible year, best player of all time, had a terrible year, and his friend said to him, "Let me give you some chipping lessons." So over the winter time, his friend, who's another pro, Phil Thomas, said to him, "I'll give you some chipping lessons." And what he did was he got Jack's clubs and he put them in a vise and he bent them so that when Jack addressed the ball, it didn't sit flat on the ground. His wedge I'm talking about now, it sat like that. So the wedge actually sat on the ground on its toe. And he said to him, "Listen, Jack, we're going to spend the entire winter now just hitting balls off the toe." And it revolutionised Nicklaus's chipping, along with a change to his technique. He sort of made a lot of a looping chipping action. Now, Nicklaus was really good because he hit so many fairways and greens. He didn't really need to use the chipping clubs anyway. So he wasn't that fussed about becoming a good chipper, even though he was a very good chipper anyway. And so he has adopted that technique, the best player of all time. That's how he chipped his entire career. Now, Tiger, when he gets into a bit of a ropey lie, he puts it up onto its toe like that. And his rationale for that is if it's sort of thick, tangly grass and you're trying to chip delicately and the club moves slowly, the tangly grass grabs the club. If it sits like that, the tangly grass doesn't quite grab the club as much. It sort of goes through. So there's only that little bit of grass of club to go through. Now, we already know the club's sitting snuggling underneath the ball, so it's already got closer contact with the very underneath of the ball. But off a bad lie, just try it out. And again, on one of my YouTube videos, I've done that, where I chip off concrete. I wonder if I can find it here for you now. I actually chip some shots off concrete. Just by doing this. Now you'd think, well, how the hell can you chip off concrete? But you can. Oh, well, I can't seem to get the connection here, but yeah, I can. Right, here we go. Okay, this is an old video I did years ago. Sorry about this.
If we sit the club normally, the club sits like this. If we rest the club upright, you can see more of the blade sits underneath the ball, which makes it easier to get the ball out.
Let me get that out of the light. Okay, so I'm putting the club on the concrete now outside my shop.
Terrible lie of the concrete. Rest the club upright. So again, same thing. Terrible lie of the concrete. I rest the club upright.
Now you can hear when I'm doing that, you can hear the club just clipping the ground. You can hear the sound of it. But I get the ball airborne because I know that there's just enough of the club to sit underneath and pop the ball up in the air. The worst lies you can have in chipping are muddy lies. They're terrible. And I'd encourage all of you, by the way, to put the ball into a nice lie. If you've got a muddy lie, just take it off the muddy lie. Do not try and build your game around using trying to. I've got to play off this muddy, horrible lie. Forget it. If it's a muddy lie, just move it to a decent lie. Even if you're outside the area of preferred lies, I recommend you do that. Really. Do I use certain grips for certain chip shots? Tiger changes his grip depending on how he wants the ball to react. Tiger has 4 grips for chipping. He has his normal grip. He has his reverse overlap. He has his double-handed grip, and he has a chipping grip like this. And Butch Harmon did a great Q&A recently online, and he was saying that Tiger's remarkable. He says what he does, he walks up to each shot. He does a rehearsal with his normal hand position. Yeah, so he does rehearsal swings. Then when he steps up to the ball, he changes his hand position, hits the shot with that new hand position. He doesn't even know he's doing it. He's just so instinctive. And Tiger took lessons off Seve Ballesteros for his chipping. And Tiger obviously was a brilliant chipper at the time, one of the world's best players at the time. He went to go and see Seve for some chipping lessons, and Tiger said, I was astounded. He said how Seve would say, well, for that lie, you put more pressure on the right hand. For this shot, you play more pressure on the left hand. For that shot there, you split the hands. For this shot, you put this finger down. And Seve had a million different ways of doing it. He was so creative as a golfer. And Tiger lapped it up. He loved every bit of it. And so, yes, you do use certain grips for certain chips. If I have a chip where I really want to get the club with a lot more height, I'll split my hands because that gives me more flick in the hands there. So I've got a nice fluffy line, I'm getting the ball extremely high, I'll split my hands. If I've got a line where I'm trying to hit the ball a bit lower, I'll tend to sort of go to a chipping grip like this and sort of stiffen the wrist up a little bit. So I'll hold the club a bit tighter, and that'll keep the club moving to the target. Again, there's so much experimentation you can do with chipping and putting. There's a chap called Peter Senior, made millions of pounds as a pro golfer, and he put his hands the other way around when he was chipping. That's his normal hand position for his long shots, and then for his short shots, he just put his hands the other way around. Because he experimented, they didn't care. You know, all they're trying to do is trying to get the ball to get the hole as close as possible. So you're absolutely right to use certain chips and for certain grips for different chips. And so I'm just going to give you a little demonstration of that. If I don't want height on the ball, then I will definitely put my fingers down the handle a bit. That means my wrists are less likely to work, and that'll keep my hands pushing forwards, and that'll send the ball out low. If I split my hands, that means my hands are a bit more active. The right hand will up underneath the left a little bit, and that puts a bit more height on the ball. Now, if you are suffering with your hands, you've got a bit of arthritis, or you've got a bit of stiffness, or you're missing a digit or something, it's well worthwhile getting slightly fatter handles on your handles. Speak to your pro and just say, well, I want them thickened out a little bit. You know, quite a few young guys that I teach at the club do have a bit of arthritis in the hands. We just fatten the handles for them. It helps with a bit more control. Thanks, Jay. You struggle with one grip. It's an interesting point, though, because you've got to sort of pitch your practice and pitch your learning and pitch what you listen to at the level that you're at. But you should always be experimenting. There's always something to do. There's always something that you can add to what you're doing. All right, guys. Well, listen, thanks ever so much for tuning in. Thanks for joining me. Any questions? I'll send you my email address. Any questions, give me a shout. Any other questions you've got, is my telephone number as well. Just give me a shout. If any golf-related questions, or you ever want to chat about the game, just give me a shout. I think it's super important that we keep ourselves mentally healthy during the lockdown. This is tough, this one, I think. My pleasure, James. It's tough, this one. Shorter days, dark nights. It's horrible in the morning. Nights are shorter and longer. Nights are longer, days are shorter, sort of thing. So if there is any of you out there on your own, and you want to chat, give me a shout, give me a call, ask me a golf question. Just make that the easiest way of getting a bridge across to me. Or speak to someone at the On Course Foundation. Don't sit alone at home. Don't get bored. Don't get doing negative things, which we can all do from time to time. Give each one a shout. The whole point of the On Course Foundation is that we're here to help one another, and we're here to support one another, and that includes me supporting you, and also we get so much out of it. Di, Alistair, and I, we love dealing with you guys. So thanks very much, lads, for tuning in, and if any ladies are tuning in, that'll be out to you as well. So keep yourselves healthy. We're going to do another session next week. If Friday night suits you best at 8:30, then I'm up for that. Just let Will know, and we'll go from there. My extreme pleasure. Thanks very much, guys, and keep yourselves occupied. All right. Cheerio.